Today's Tanya for the 27th of Av, Chav Zayin Av, is in Igeres HaKedesh Siman Ches, the 8th letter. It's on Daf Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. The number at the bottom of the page is 434. Now, the Rebbe asked the question, how is it measure for measure that by giving tzedakah here on earth, giving physical tzedakah, the reward is that in the davening we can actually feel God's presence and be in touch with God Himself. Not only the ray of godliness as it is in Gan Eden, in Olam Haba, but more, God Himself becomes real to us and becomes available to us in the davening as a result of the mitzvah of tzedakah. So how is this measure for measure? By the standards of measure for measure, the reward for giving tzedakah should be that just as you're giving the person comfort or a taste of this world, you should be rewarded by being given the comfort and the taste of the world to come. So it's world for world, measure for measure. Only since God's measure is always greater than ours, so we give physical, and God gives the Ruchnizdika world, the world to come. But at least they're common, it's measure for measure in that they're both worlds, this world and the other world. But to be given as a reward for tzedakah, a connection with God Himself, which is much higher than Gan Eden, how is that measure for measure? On page 434. So the explanation is, by way of analogy, like when we plant seeds for wheat, or we plant a seed for fruit trees, where the stalk of wheat, the stalk of wheat that grows out of the kernel of wheat that is planted, and the tree and its fruits that grow out of the garden, out of the seed that is planted, they are not of the same substance as the seed from which they grow, because the seed itself, the kernel of wheat that is planted, or the fruit seed that is planted before the stalk or the tree grows from the seed, the seed first decomposes. It decomposes and it stops existing. It loses its substance. It loses its existence. And only then does the tree or the stalk grow from it. And it is the ability to give forth vegetation that exists in the earth. It's the earth's ability to make things grow, or that it's the power. It's the power within the earth itself is hu hameitzi v'hamegadol hashebelis v'ha'ilan u'peiresov. It is that the earth, or according to the other version, the power within the earth that gives that creates and makes grow the stalk or the tree. Why then do we need the seed at all if the seed is going to rot and decompose, and the tree is growing from the earth and not from the seed? So why do we need the seed at all? It's because the earth would not produce that which it can produce. It will not actualize its potential. It is only when the seed or the kernel decomposes in the earth and its strength melts and merges with the strength, the ability in the earth to make things grow, and they become one, when they merge together, That's what causes the earth to actualize its potential and to actually make grow that which it can, with that which it is capable of growing. And it then gives forth its ability to produce a stalk that is similar to the kernel that was planted. But in doing so, it produces much more than the original seed. You plant one seed, and from it grows a stalk, one kernel of wheat, and from it grows a stalk of wheat, and on that stalk there are many kernels. The same is true also, that you get many fruits on one tree coming from one seed. So in terms of quantity, the earth gives forth much more than was planted in it. And also in terms of quality, the fruits themselves are me'ula be'ili rav otzim l'mayla mayla me'muhusa v'yatzmusa shalagan hanatua, is much greater in quality, in taste, and so on, than the seed that was planted. And the same is true also for vegetables that grow from that which we plant, that is similar to the seed of a fruit tree, as for example cucumbers and other such vegetables that grow from a seed. And all of this is because the main source and root of the fruits comes from the earth's ability to make things grow, not from the seed. And in the earth there is the ability to make all sorts of things grow. What does the seed do? The seeds that we plant in the earth, it is like an awakening from above. It's the initiative from below, awakening from below. The initiative from below, hanikras b'shem halo asman b'kisvei hardizal, that is described in Kabbalah as the elevation of the feminine waters. So what is the purpose of the seed? It seems that there are two things. First of all, that without the seed, the earth has all this ability to produce all sorts of fruits and all sorts of grains, but it won't do anything unless it is stimulated by the seed. So to bring from potential to actual this ability that the earth has, this is stimulated or brought about by the seed. So the seed is the catalyst that activates the earth's ability to produce fruits or vegetables or grain. The other thing that the seed does is, since the earth has a wide range, a wide variety of products that it can produce, what will determine which product will be produced in this particular place and on this particular occasion? The seed selects a particular product and makes the earth produce that one. So that when you plant an apple seed, the tree that will grow from that seed will be an apple tree, not something else, not a peach tree. And that's because of the seed. Had the seed been a peach seed, then the tree growing from it would be a peach tree. Not that the tree grows from the seed, it grows from the earth. But what stimulates the earth to this particular product? The seed as it decomposes in the earth. Now, this idea of decomposing is explained in Hasidus at great length in many different contexts. As for example, the flash of Chokhmah, the new insight, a radically new idea, when it occurs to a person, it usually occurs to him after the question which this new idea answers and resolves, after the question has decomposed in his mind, so to speak. A person is trying to understand a difficult problem that he has on a certain subject. So he thinks about it, and he doesn't know what the answer is. He thinks it over again, and he still doesn't understand what is the answer. So the popular expression is that he works at it. He concentrates. But what exactly is he doing when he concentrates? The question he already knows. He knows the question intimately. He knows it by heart. He knows it backwards and forwards. It's the answer he doesn't know. So what good is it to concentrate on the question when it's not the question that he wants to understand? He wants to understand the answer. And he doesn't know the answer. So what happens is that the person concentrates meaning that he excludes all other thoughts from his mind because he wants only to know the answer to this question. And as the Rebbe explains and describes in Maimorim, how Ish Sichli, a person, an intelligent person who sits down to study a subject, and he finds that he's not understanding, how this makes him bitter, and he forgets everything. He forgets that he hasn't eaten. He forgets that he's tired. He forgets what day it is. He wants nothing but the answer to this question, to understand this subject. What happens eventually is that having concentrated so exclusively, where there's nothing else on his mind besides this question, he reaches a point where he throws in the towel. He despairs. He feels that he will never know the answer, or he can't know the answer. And it's precisely at that moment that this new insight flashes into his mind. And that's because he had reached a point where there was nothing in his mind but this question or this issue, and then even this question decomposed, so to speak. He despaired of it. He lost hope of ever knowing, and that's when the answer comes. So on the one hand, we could say that the answer came as a result of the question. Because he asked the question, that's what brought about the answer. On the other hand, it wasn't until he stopped asking the question, until he despaired, until he gave up on the question, that the answer came. So it didn't come from the question. The question first had to decompose. The question had to get out of the way in order for the answer to come. So did the answer come from the question or not from the question? The same is true with the seed. Does the tree grow out of the seed or doesn't it? On the one hand, since the seed has to decompose before the tree will grow, so it's not coming from the seed. The seed is decomposing. On the other hand, without the seed, nothing happens. So when the tree grows out of a seed, is that measure for measure? So the fact that what grows from the tree is similar to the seed, that makes it somewhat measure for measure. But the truth is that in quality, the tree is infinitely greater, not measure for measure at all, infinitely greater than the seed. So the idea is that there are certain things that come as a result of your efforts, and certain things come as a result of your bittul. It is the bittul of the seed, not the substance of the seed, that brings the tree. It is the bittul of Chachma, where at the point of Chachma you despair even of the question. That is the only thing left in your mind. And that bittul is what permits you to receive, to be capable of receiving a whole new insight, a whole new subject, an original idea, an original thought. At any rate, original to you. So the Rebbe will go on to say that this is the case with the tzedakah and the godliness that comes from it. It's not the act of tzedakah. You're giving a person a little bit of this world, and God will give you in return a little bit of the world to come. That would be the measure for measure if you were looking at the substance of the tzedakah. You're giving $1, God will give you a heavenly dollar. You're giving a piece of bread, God will give you heavenly bread. But when we look not at the substance of the tzedakah, when we look at the bittul of it, putting yourself aside and giving somebody else, putting somebody else before yourself, that bittul, the kindness within the tzedakah, the element of bittul within the tzedakah, that produces measure for measure an equal bittul, so to speak, that God brings himself down to the person and gives of himself. And as the Alter Rebbe says later, b'makim shatameitze gedulosei, where you find God's greatness, meaning God's kindness, chesed is called gedula, where you find God's greatness, you find also his humility. Because the element of humility in the kindness is what brings this revelation of godliness to the person when he expresses his bittul in giving tzedakah. And this is what the Rebbe ends today's shir with. The Alter Rebbe ends the shir with that in the Arizal, in the writings of the Arizal. In Kabbalah, this is called the elevation of the feminine waters. The feminine waters is the attribute of bittul. The openness, when the seed decomposes in the ground, then the ability to make things grow that exists in the seed because it came from the ground originally. When the seed gives that up and allows it to merge with the earth's ability to make things grow, that combination is what stimulates and causes the growth of the tree. The same is true with the feminine trait, the ability to surrender and to merge with the other Jew in giving tzedakah, for example. That ability is the bittul within kindness, the bittul within tzedakah, and that's what brings the bittul, so to speak, from above, where God puts himself aside and makes himself available to you. In the Hayom Yom for today, the 27th day of Menachem Av, the Rebbe writes that the month of Elul, since this is already Shabbos Mevorchem Elul, the month of Elul is the month of stock taking, making an account. Just as in the physical, in a business, in order for the business to be successful and there should be profit in the business, you need from time to time to make an account of where you're up to in your finances, and to fix whatever is missing, whatever is wrong, where the money is being lost. The same is true also of Ruchnis Dik Aveda, of a spiritual life in serving God. That each year, that during the year, every Jew is busy working at Torah and mitzvahs and good midas, being a mensch. In the month of Elul is the month when he has to sit down and make an account. That every Jew, each one according to his level, whether he's a businessman or whether he's a student of Torah, he needs to make an honest account of his own soul, an account of all that has transpired, all that has occurred to him and all that he has done in the course of the year, so that he knows what was good during the year